Those who are trying to get the truth about what they now call UAPs, they say they've been lied to by people who are not elected and blocked and prevented from getting to the truth. The governments know about their superpowers. They know recently that a Hellfire missile was fired, or they've had footage of it, the most powerful missile in the American armory, which probably makes it in the world. It was useless. It was like a pebble against a car. The UFO was seen over Chernobyl by a crowd of people. It emitted a pink beam onto the power station, as a result of which it was a steam explosion instead of a complete nuclear electronic explosion. When we published this journal, all we knew was that our cooperation with extraterrestrials had manipulated karma, and for all I know, that enabled them to reduce the impact of Chernobyl fourfold. It's an incredible, incredible case which I personally witnessed, physically in the room with Dr. King.
You're a disciple of Dr. George King, who really brought through some fascinating information. Would you like to give us just a little bit of background about Dr. George King and what he did?
I'd love to, actually, because he was absolute one-off. I personally believe he was an avatar, even beyond a master. He was certainly a master, and he proved it many, many times. He started an organization called the Ethereus Society, of which I've been secretary for 4 decades now, believe it or not. Started in my 20s with that role, and in Europe. And because we also have a headquarters in America and other parts of the world, we have branches all over the world. We're not massive, but we have thousands of people who are interested in what we believe and support it. But he was a real pioneer, because he started this in 1955. And he went into a public arena in a place called Caxton Hall in London, just almost opposite our Houses of Parliament, and went into a deep trance state known as samadhi, which is a very high yogic state. For those, probably many people who hear this will know about that. And in that state, he received transmission from a master called Ethereus. That's his code name. And this master Ethereus has spoke through him through the decades until his passing in 1997. I was very lucky, actually, because not only was, as you rightly say, I was a disciple of his, but I also became a very close friend of his too. And we were in touch every day, I would say, for the last 20 years, pretty much every day. Either I was with him or we were on the phone or whatever. And I co-authored his last 2 books. And I will say that one of those books, which is called Contacts with the Gods from Space, which was published in his lifetime in 1996, has been absolutely vindicated even in recent days, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years, by some of the things that are coming out now, particularly in Congress in America. And well done, America, for even having hearings in Congress. They're beating a lot of us over in Europe. Britain isn't doing this. It's a good thing, but they're being stonewalled, of course. And anyway, some of the revelations made by military and Air Force personnel about the capabilities of extraterrestrial spacecraft, he not only revealed in this book, Contacts with the Gods from Space, but also explained how they achieved it, which even the experts, the military experts, don't know. They recognize a lot of them. This is a superior technology, but they don't know how it works. But for that, you need to come to a contactee, and I think Dr. King certainly has a unique legacy. I mean, there simply isn't anyone in the world, who goes back to that period of the 50s, who still has a thriving movement 70 years later.
Absolutely. I would love to learn more about Master Ethereus. Who was this consciousness that spoke through him?
This is an intelligence. Now, one of the things that marked Dr. King out, and actually still marks us out today, is that we believe in life in this solar system. We believe in life throughout the cosmos, actually, a multi-dimensional life. So although we might not be able to live on Saturn or Jupiter or Venus or whatever, it doesn't mean there's no life there. Any more than that we can say there's no life here when people leave their physical bodies, or if they die, that they don't exist. They do exist. Unless you're clairvoyant, you can't see them, but they are here. And it's likewise, you go to other planets throughout this solar system, and they are populated by wonderful intelligences, actually. I mean, they don't have wars, they don't have cruelty, they don't have poverty. Those things are insane to them. I mean, they are very troubled by what we do, but they won't interfere. But to come to your question, the Master Ethereus is an intelligence from Venus, and he is a very compassionate being and a great, very humble intelligence, I would say, but a very great master indeed, who gave wisdom and actually was, as it turned out, the master of Dr. George King. So there was a big link between, obviously, there.
That's fascinating to me. I know of one other channeled source that claims to also be from Venus, which is the law of one. Is Dr. or Master Ethereus connected with that?
I haven't come across that. I mean, there are many, many claims out there, and I don't expect people to take my word for any of this, but what I would say is it's worth looking into. And I don't think you're going to find a legacy, a record over the years that you'll find is you can compare with Dr. King's, but doesn't mean to say he's the only one. I'm not saying that either. But you do have to discriminate. They can't all be true because they contradict each other, some of them. And so it's difficult. I've noticed quite a few claimed contactees will say that they are in touch with the Pleiades or Orion or somewhere along Sirius, somewhere a long way away. But of course, it's logical, is it not, that the intelligence is most concerned with us here on Earth will be our, if we can call them this, we don't really deserve to in many ways, but our brothers and sisters, if you like, of this solar system.
I'm curious about the discrimination that you mentioned, and I heard you speaking in another interview about how you are able to use discrimination to work through these contradictions in various channeled sources. I'm curious to hear more of your perspective on that.
Well, there's a couple of things that we've got going for us with discrimination, and one is logic, common sense, actually. Intellectuality isn't always very logical or common sense, but however, we can use our intellect and we can look at it rationally and we can see if there's evidence. I mean, with Dr. King, there is evidence. I mean, he published information he couldn't have known. It wasn't known. And, I've dealt with this. And if you're interested, I can give you examples of that.
Yes.
I'll give you one example then. In 1958, he received a communication revealing there'd been a Russian atomic accident not long before that. It turned out to be some months before it, but the effects of it were still prevalent. I think it was April 58, I believe it was, that he got this. And he published it. And there was no reports of any Russian atomic accident. And he even specified that it was an atomic center or laboratory or power station. It was a nuclear station, really, that had had an accident. Well, this was absolutely denied. It didn't come out in the press anywhere for 18 years. And then it came out from a man called Dr. Zores Medvedev, who came to London, and I was a school teacher at that time. I was just left university, and I was interested in this because I could see that it confirmed what Dr. King had said, which had been completely denied by everybody ever since. And I went along, actually, to the BBC, which, the BBC in London, and I told them this. I said, look, this scoop, which has been published in a journal called The New Scientist, actually, we said this, the Ethereus Society said this, in this journal, I showed it to them, Cosmic Voice it's called, it was published, and you can't, and the figures are the same, the rough number of injured, the rough number of dead, and it was from a nuclear establishment. Nobody else ever said that. And so I'll tell you what they said. The BBC, I got my first taste of the cover-up then, because the BBC said to me, oh, well, if you can prove this, you absolutely proven your organization. They did an interview with me, but they said, you'll have to go back and get this confirmed by Dr. Medvedev, who was in London at the time, which I did. I went along, I found him at a university where he was speaking. I got it on tape, brought it back to the BBC, and they said, right, that's it. And the interview didn't come out. So they recorded it, but it didn't come out. So later I phoned them and I asked to speak to the interviewer. And they said to me, there's nobody here of that name. I said, well, I was with him earlier, a few hours ago. He interviewed me about this. I said, well, he must have, I don't know who he was, because we don't know anyone of that name on this program at all.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, this it sounds far-fetched, but it's true. And I really was staggered by this. And because I hadn't sort of met the cover-up before in that way. They had a thing in Britain then called a D notice, which prevented them from releasing certain things if they're related to spacecraft, extraterrestrial spacecraft. And it never came out. And I pushed on with this for almost 2 years. And eventually it came out. The journal New Scientist actually published on April the 27th, if anyone wants to check it out, 1978, that they had been scooped by a UFO. Because they had to, because it was absolutely... That's just one example. There are many other examples I could give of factual proof. I think even better, though, than sort of, if you like, journalistic proof, is the content of the transmissions, as we call them, that he received, not only from the Master Ethereus, but here's a controversial one, from the Master Jesus, who came from another planet, who came from Venus, we believe. Star of Bethlehem definitely wasn't a star. That's obvious, can't have been. That was a craft. If it led 3 men and wise men at that, so led them to a stable, then that was some kind of craft. But he gave some wonderful teachings. Now, the 12 blessings is the finest description of God that I've ever seen anywhere. And I look at a lot of things, philosophers, religions, scripts and scriptures, very fine. And so people can judge that. And there's another one I'd recommend called The 9 Freedoms. And that was delivered by an intelligence from Mars. And again, I would say that just stands head and shoulders above things that I absolutely love, such as the aphorisms of Patanjali, if people know that, the Tao Te Ching, some of these, the Dharmapada of the Buddhists, some of these great sources of wisdom. But for me, the 9 Freedoms is even greater, because greater revelations can now be made in the age we're in now. So you can judge by those ways. But I was going to go on to say there's another way of judging, which is with your intuition. And a developed intuition can identify truth. And if you don't know, if you're not sure, best to say that. There's nothing wrong. I've taught psychics and I've broadcast with psychics, and I find and I run events on psychic powers. We had one here recently. We had over 100 people, and virtually all of them had a psychic experience during the event. And these were people completely new to it, mainly. But, I think there's 3 words that developing psychics need, and those words are, I don't know. You've got to be able to say that. There's nothing wrong in that. And you don't want to mix up your intuition with your imagination. Many people do. But if you really develop it, then you will know, and you'll know from inside this is true.
I would love to hear more about the transmissions themselves. You mentioned the 12 blessings and the 9 freedoms. If you could sum up the important messages of these transmissions, what would they be? Can I be honest? I've spoken with hundreds of people since I first started my YouTube channel. Number one universal thing that people say to me is, why can't I feel divine presence, my guidance, my higher self, etc.? People want to feel something. They want inner transformation on the spiritual path. And yet most religions and spiritual paths fall short to provide this. When I speak to people, even those who are advanced meditators who have more experience meditating than I do, they all tell me the same thing. Nothing really works to give me that connection to divine love that I'm seeking. There are simple practices that you can do that can shift things radically in your internal space. And it takes time and it takes consistency, but it's not hard. And the vast majority of people don't know this and aren't doing this and then wonder why they can't connect to divine love. And this is why I started my one-on-one sessions, so that I can work with people, find out where you're at and exactly what you need. In my sessions, I not only work on your energy field, balancing your chakra system, enhancing your energy, providing energy work for any specific area of need, and giving you feedback on what I see in your energy field, I also send you away with simple, implementable, powerful practices to actually shift your state of consciousness, connect you to your divine nature, your connection to divine love, and be able to shift your consciousness on the internal plane to move away from suffering, attachment, and judgment into peace and flow and connection to divine love. Due to my schedule being a bit packed, I can only take on a limited number of clients in the month of September, and I am looking to work with 2 to 4 people. I do offer single sessions, which are fantastic and I love them, but if you really want to go deep and see shifts, I recommend either the 2 or 4 session packages. It is likely going to fill up very fast. So if you think that you could be in one of those 2 to 4 people that wants to work with me in the month of September, check the description box for the link. I would love to hear more about the transmissions themselves. You mentioned the 12 blessings and the 9 freedoms. If you could sum up the important messages of these transmissions, what would they be?
I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. Thank you for that question. Here is one of them. This is the 12 blessings. And this was delivered by the Master Jesus in London in 1958 through Dr. King in a deep trance, meditative, samadhi. I've actually looked into, I do mediumship myself, not at this level, not at his level, but I've looked into it a lot and I've practiced it a lot. And I have never yet found anyone, even people I really admire, such as Madame Blavatsky, Alice Bailey from the old Theosophical days and so on, I've never come across a medium who I've found that uses pure somatic trance to the degree that Dr. King does, or anywhere near it, actually. This means it's very, very accurate. So the 12 blessings, you might say, is an extension of the Sermon on the Mount. It's a practice as well. It's something we practice. We have a site. People can go to our site. It's Ethereus. That's Aetherius, Ethereus.org. And we have an online 12 blessings site as well. And on those sites, we practice the 12 blessings online. And people can join in. So it's not only philosophy. And the purpose behind that is to send energy out to the world. I mean, this is not a profit-making thing at all. The whole idea of that is just purely to send energy out to the world using these 12 blessings. These contain some of the finest prayers because they are free of selfishness, to put it bluntly. There's so many people who pray, well, please God, can I have this? Can I have that? I know it's not wrong if you're ill to pray for better health. It's understandable. It's fine. But this is about the world, and this is about enlightenment and the enlightenment of all people. But the substance of it is blessing 12 focal points. And this is where the Ethereus Society really comes in, because it extends religion into a cosmic dimension, which the world desperately needs. I mean, the Pope, the Dalai Lama, all due respect to them, but they need to address the cosmic aspect in this day and age properly and fully. This really does. So as well as blessing, I won't go through all 12, but those who work for peace, the wise ones, those who heal, we get to the Mother Earth. I mean, the Mother Earth is everything to us. I mean, you talk about love-covered life. That's the Mother Earth. She is love. And her expression, her energy, and the power of Kundalini, which comes from her, this is pure love. And she's the most wonderful being. So you have the Mother Earth, you have the mighty Sun. Those people who worship the sun were wise people. They weren't ignorant pagans. They were highly intelligent people. In fact, in ancient Egypt, Akhenaten turned the whole focus of all their religion to the sun. And rightly so, very wise thing to do. So the sun, then you go beyond that to the supreme lords of karma. I mean, I love to talk about karma. I mean, karma is, I've done a radio show on karma, which according to one listener saved their life. They were going to commit suicide. up in a city here called Manchester in the north of England. I was on a show for 4 hours at night, mainstream radio show. And I had a book called Little Book of Karma. I was talking about karma. There was a woman who decided had put her pills, everything there. She had the radio on, and she said, as soon as we really talked about the positive aspect of karma, because often when people mention karma, they think, oh no, I'm not going to get any karma, I hope. Karma's like a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. Yes, there is negative karma, and that's to teach. But karma we can change our karma. We can reset our dharma. We can change world karma. Anyway, this woman said a light came physically into the room. She threw the pills away. She decided to live. I've never met her. And this was just through karma. So this is all governed in this galaxy by the supreme lords of karma. And then you come to a massive revelation, which is that the galaxy itself is a living intelligence. Makes perfect sense. I kind of see it as like a chakra of the universe, and there are many of them, and they have a magnetic body, and within that body, evolution takes place. Be it suns, planets, tiny microbes like us, whatever it might be, all life moving forward through evolution, and then you have the supreme lords of creation, and then you have the absolute. And this is where, as I mentioned, is the finest. I mean, may I just give you an example from this?
Yes, please.
And by the way, people can hear these transmissions in some of our services, and we have an audio cloud service which people can subscribe to if they want to. It's very, very low price for it. We try and keep our prices as low as we can, and they can hear for themselves these transmissions just as they were delivered all those years ago. And the beautiful voice of Jesus. I mean, I have played that voice to people without telling them who it was, and people have guessed that it was Jesus, just from its beauty. But here's a little example of it. This is about the absolute, as the Master Jesus calls it. It's not he or she, it's it. It is the I, actually is he and she, but it's called it. It is the I am within man. It is the life within all things. It is the rain, it is the drought. It is the gentle breeze of summertime. It is the mighty wind across the seas. It is the seas. It is the emptiness of space. It is the fullness contained within space. It is the worlds. It is ever and forever and forever. It is infinity, and yet it is more than this, for it is behind even these things. This, O adorable children, is the God. This is the God which cannot ever be limited by man or God-man. So that's just an extract from that 12th blessing. So that's one of the core teachings, you might say, and practices that we have. And the other is that I would strongly, this is my favorite actually of all books on earth. It's called The 9 Freedoms. And this is the one that really goes into where we're going. It goes beyond reincarnation. It goes beyond nirvana. It goes into our whole existence all the way through this solar system to the highest possible level of existence for any kind of intelligence on any planet or even on the sun.
You've convinced me to get this book.
It's the book if I was to recommend one book, that's the book I would recommend. I mean, and I've found it to be true. I mean, I'm very, very interested at the moment, myself, just personally, in raising Kundalini to high chakras. And, it's taken me a long time, I will say. I mean, I've been at this for over 50 years, believe it or not, since I found it at university. And I won't forget the time I read this book for the first time at university, and I've never strayed from the path ever since. From that path that it set. I mean, I've made my mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I've stuck to the course throughout. And right now, I'm very interested in the bridge between what in here would be called the 5th freedom and the 6th freedom, which is cosmic consciousness to ascension. And, I'm way below, obviously, the ascension level. But I'm still very interested in that bridge. And what is the difference between nirvana, a state of high consciousness, and what used to be called the bodhisattvas, of old. And I'm very interested in that. But that's just one example. But in here, it's like the absolute benchmark. It tells you what will happen, how it will happen, in what way it must happen. So it takes you through all the stages, and then you can also see the stages ahead of you that you're coming to and where you'll evolve to. It's highly inspiring, but it's also very practical, extremely usable, functional book, I would say.
So the 9 freedoms, are they 9 different states of consciousness?
They are. No, they're 9 essential stepping stones.
Okay.
And if you like, I'll say what the 9 are, if you like.
I would love to hear them.
Okay. So the first one, I don't need to look to, what am I looking for? I know it. I've read this hundreds of times, this book. The first step is bravery. So that's interesting in itself because, without that, you can't really you can't even break free from conditioning. I mean, humanity is conditioned. We're conditioned in universities and out of universities by all various types of thinking. Occasionally in the West, you'll see people who broke free through experience. There are people in the West, such as the wonderful Hildegard of Bingen, for example, a 12th century, I think, abbess, who obviously had a Kundalini experience. And, I could name others, Pascal and the Master Eckhart and the 13th century and so on. You see these people because they experienced something beyond the dogmas, and in fact, poor old Master Eckhart died while being investigated by the Inquisition. That could happen too. But they were breaking free through their experience. I mean, the poet Wordsworth, he must have experienced, in my opinion, samadhi. I mean, you have a look at the poem on Ode on Tintern Abbey, and that is a pure description of samadhi, and not maybe to the highest level, but it's a wonderful description which shows the universality of these states. I love the fact that, in the medieval days when you had the Crusades, you had the Muslims and the Christians at war, you had the Jews being persecuted, and yet you had the mystical Christians, the Kabbalists from the Jewish tradition, and you had the Sufis and other mystics from the Muslim tradition all working together because they were all coming to the same conclusions. They were going beyond the dogmas. So anyway, I diverge. So the first step, you've got to break free from the conditioning and the things, the things that you're told, or you can't do this, or that's a bit different, or people will laugh at you, or people will, when people are having spiritual, I know there's going to be people watching this podcast, by the way, who will know this because they are having, some of them anyway, spiritual experiences and realizations that even their loved ones don't believe. And don't really want them to be having, actually, if the truth be known. And this has to be maneuvered, and you need bravery. I mean, that's just one example of it. So that's the first freedom. The second freedom is love, and that's love. I mean, these aren't specifically in order. I mean, they come together, but they aren't specifically in order of priority. So you've got bravery, you've got love, but not love just at the personal level. Love for all life. When you start to awaken the heart chakra, I know this from experience, and so do many others, maybe you do too, you start to experience a love energy, which is impersonal, but very peace-inducing. It's a beautiful thing, and you have a love for all life, regardless, animals, plants, all living things, and all things live. That's why it's a love-covered life. So you have that. So love is the second. The third is service. Service is the thing in these days. Service is greater than self-development. Both are essential, but service is the greatest thing. And it's a form of self-development. Through service, you will advance. Karma means you must. And so it's a wonderful thing. That's the third freedom. The fourth is enlightenment, which is a very misunderstood thing because people, certainly in the West, tend to think it's an intellectual thing. It isn't. I mean, the intellect is, don't let me knock this, because some mystics and New Age people, they do. They say we don't need the intellect. We do need the intellect. It's a very valuable thing. We need to analyze. We need to have critical thinking even. All those things are important, but it won't take you to enlightenment on its own. So this tells you how to attain these higher states where you're going beyond, ordinary levels of thinking into inspired levels of thinking. And even ultimately, when you really reach the higher states, you go even beyond thought, actually. So that's enlightenment. And then we come to cosmic consciousness, which is the most wonderful thing. It's the most, this is a consciousness of the oneness. It's a state of being of all life throughout creation, and it's complete cohesion in every aspect. So that's the fifth freedom. And some have experienced that or perhaps tasted it to some degree, but not many. It's very rare. Some people call this nirvana. But even when you reach that state, and it's taken me a long time to even experience what I call entry-level cosmic consciousness. I've been at this for, say, 50 years, and I've only experienced this myself in the last couple of years. But when you do, if you're really aware of what's happening, you'll also know something else, which is that you still got a long way to go. And that's where some of the Eastern teachings are wrong. It's like you enter nirvana, you amalgamate with the divine, it's all over. It's not all over. It's far from all over. And you've got to be able to induce cosmic consciousness at will, under all conditions, all necessary conditions. And you've got to raise all the energies within you, and I haven't achieved this, by the way, but I know about it, to the highest point, the highest chakra. And they will be beautiful, because all the chakras are good. All of them have great, the base center has its physical functionality, which we all need, preservation of life, and I could go through them, but it's another topic. But the essence, the kernel of each one of them has to be risen with and through Kundalini to the highest chakra. And only when you do that comes the sixth freedom, which is ascension. And that's when you no longer need to reincarnate, because we shouldn't need to reincarnate. Reincarnation isn't of itself a good thing. It's of itself a necessary thing. And you'll get that a bit wrong. So ultimately, you can escape from the wheel of rebirth. But even when we do, when that time comes for all of us, we've still got further to go. So then we goes through into interplanetary existence, Saturnian existence, which is the highest of the planets in terms of its life forms, and ultimately solar existence on the sun. There's your 9.
Thank you so much for breaking that down.
Pleasure.
I have so many questions. There's so many different directions that we would go. You've mentioned the sun several times, and I would love to learn more about the sun. You said it's the 9th freedom, so it's the highest.
Yes, solar existence. Yeah.
Yes. What is the sun, and what role does it play, I guess?
You know what we are, Melissa? You, me, all of us. We are solidified sunlight. That's the master Ethereus, by the way. That's not me. That's the master Ethereus said that very early on through Dr. King. That's all we are. All life is solidified sunlight. All life in this solar system is a result of the energy of the sun radiating through us, and at a higher level, not just the physical radiation, even more the prana, the chi, the natural energies which are radiated. And the solar lords are totally selfless. They don't have a week off on holiday. And if they did, they'd be seeking, I shouldn't make this joke, so I won't make it, but, we all go seeking the sun on our holidays, don't they? They are there, let's put it that way. But that's a silly remark. They are divine beings who are completely selfless all the time. And time is only a measurement of spatial movement anyway. And it's measured our journey around the sun, isn't it? That's how we measure our hours, our years, everything. So these are wonderful beings pouring forth their radiations constantly, and they are totally in tune with their master, which is, I should say, the sun itself. And all life, even the Mother Earth herself, this living being, came initially from the sun, or was created by and through the sun. The Old Testament, the Hindu scripts, their concept of the creator is really the sun. the creation of life, because they didn't understand the cosmos and didn't know what it was really, but they did understand this creative force of life on Earth. Well, that came from the sun. As a matter of fact, of course, there are beings, as I mentioned with the 12 blessings, even above the sun. But those are new revelations that haven't been made before. They've been made through Dr. George King. He was a most amazing master. He was an extremely accomplished master who could switch samadhi on off. He could enter samadhi in 2 minutes flat if he needed to. Now that's under all sorts of conditions, by the way. He might be in the middle of a meal and suddenly get the blip that he had to take a transmission, and he'd have to be ready. He'd go to what he had then was a transmission room. He'd sit in front of a microphone, and within 2 minutes, he'd be ready to enter samadhi, receive the transmission, whoever it might be from. He could do that, and that's really unprecedented. And, whereas if we even get there at all, we have to, go to tremendous lengths. And I say this from experience, after many years of striving for this and eventually dipping my toe in this ocean of samadhi, and that's all I would call it in my case. But, it's a tremendous effort, and you have to be completely controlled, and you have to have conditions right to do it. But he could, anyway, I digress, but just to illustrate his capabilities. But the sun is the source of all life, and that's why, as I said earlier, those who worship the sun and revered the sun were far more intelligent, and I would say in that way more advanced than maybe some of the missionaries who condemned them as pagans and tried to convert them away from their beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just a side note. I'm not expecting you to have the answer to this, but I interview a lot of near-death experiencers.
Oh, yeah.
And almost universally, they see a light.
Yes.
Sometimes I've even spoken to several who say that the light that they went into was the sun, and they experienced the sun as this loving, God-like being. So I've wondered at
Wonderful.
times.
I'd never heard that before. So thank you for sharing that with me from near-death experiences. That's very interesting, and I think they're right. That would be my reaction. And because all light, as we have it in the solar system, comes in directly or indirectly from the sun. Not only on this physical realm, on the realm you go to when you die. And that's where they've started to go, the near-death experiences. You don't need actually to have a near-death experience, by the way, to leave the body and go to another realm. It can happen quite naturally. I've experienced it. Many others have experienced it. You can have contacts with people on other realms, and most of the people I've heard from other realms, while they're still there, one thing they do is wish they'd spent more time on spiritual things in one way or another when they were here. And I'm sure you've come across that. That's very prevalent. Their priorities instantly change. In most cases, I'm not going to be dogmatic about it, but certainly the more advanced people anyway. Actually, the more advanced they are, the more they're aware of their karmic mistakes and the need to correct them. A less advanced person would be less aware of that when they die. But yeah, that's very interesting, and I would completely accept the concept of that light, I've heard about it, mentoring a light many times, would be something like, or coming from or connected to the radiation from the sun.
It's so fascinating. Now, you mentioned that we live in a multi-dimensional solar system and that there is life specifically on Saturn, which kind of leads into the question of ET intelligences and the things that we've been seeing in our sky. I would love to hear a little more if you have any information on who they are and what they're doing here.
I have a lot, actually. And I've been doing some sort of mainstream television and other things over here recently because of the Congress hearings in America and some of the findings that have come out of it. I've been campaigning on UFOs for, again, about 40 years, and I've seen a massive change in the movement. I mean, we haven't got there, but to come to your point, I do think this. I think that even if the governments were disclosed everything, and they're not, In fact, the Congress people, the representatives in the House of Representatives, Democrat and Republican alike, it's not a partisan thing at all, this. Those who are trying to get the truth about what they now call UAPs, they've renamed them, bit of spin and a bit of management there, but they're okay, UAPs then. That those who are trying to get the truth out, they say they've been lied to by people who are not elected and blocked and prevented from getting to the truth. But I actually believe that even if there was full disclosure of everything the governments knew, and they know about their superpowers, they know recently that a Hellfire missile was fired, or they've had footage of it, it's actually last October, at an extraterrestrial spacecraft, and it bounced off, according to what came out in Congress anyway. If that's a correct video, and they seem to be taking it very seriously. No one has denied it yet, by the way, which has surprised me. I've been expecting the Pentagon to deny it. They haven't done yet. I think they might, but they haven't done yet. But anyway, this Hellfire missile, which is the most powerful missile in the American armory, which probably makes it in the world, was useless. It was like a pebble against a car. But the extraterrestrial craft, though, didn't retaliate. The extraterrestrial craft didn't fire back. It was peaceful. It was loving. They have tremendous love for us, which is amazing, really, when you consider the lies that have been told about them and are still being told, and the hostile reception they've had. It's not the first attempt to fire a missile at an extraterrestrial spacecraft, according to CIA papers. So this is something that goes on. But why are they here? Even if there was full disclosure, I don't think we'd get the answers that you just asked, because I don't think they know. And that's one of their problems. They're interested in the defense implications and whether or not they can do, re-engineer things so that they can get weaponry out of it and so on. Their motive is so bad, not just in America, by the way. In Russia, you've got the same thing. China, you've got the same thing. It's around the world. That's there. Why is it a Pentagon matter? Why is it a Ministry of Defense matter in Britain? Why are they in those departments? These are non-hostile craft with superior technology. I will just say as an aside, I'll just mention that this book that I wrote with Dr. King, Contacts with the Gods from Space, in his life, there's the last book published in his lifetime, which I co-authored. I was honored to co-author with him 29 years ago, detailed some of the things that have come out of Congress in the last 3 years, even in this month. Was detailed in that book, not only the capability, but how they have the capability, which the government still doesn't know. And experts, military experts don't know, and they admit they don't know. But in that book, Contacts with the Gods of Space, there are answers in there. Go to page 35 if you're interested. But to get, though, the answer to the questions you've asked, which are the ones that matter. Why are they here? Who are they? What is their plan? When will they land openly and force everyone to believe in them? How do we work with them? For those questions, you can't get those from governments. Even if they came clean, you can't get them. You've got to go to a contactee. And there really isn't a contact, because the contactees have been told if they're genuine. And for that, I'll repeat, I'm not saying he's the only one at all, but there were a number of people in the 50s. George Adamski was one. Dan Fry, another American, was another. I met him when he was a very old man. Frank Stranger's another one. Met him too when he was an old man. They had movements, but they don't have movements now. They've died out. The only one that's still going today around the world is Dr. King. And his contacts, I think they stand above any others that I know of. I don't want to be dogmatic here. So you will get those answers from the teachings that he's given. So what are the answers? They are here to change, help us to change without forcing us to change. And that's why they don't land openly. And by the way, this isn't new. This goes back thousands of years. You've got Vimanas in the Ramayana, celestial craft. That's what it means. It's a Sanskrit word for it. And so on. And in the Bible, it's full of UFOs. Ezekiel had an amazing encounter, and on and on. And it goes through the ages. They are waiting for us to change. And they're waiting for us to cooperate with them. And they're waiting for our karma to be right. May I share with you a brilliant quote,
Yes,
Melissa?
please.
This isn't actually from a transmission. This is from Dr. King himself. And there are many things said about karma, and some of them are really good. What goes around comes around. To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. It's probably the most famous. We've had big songs written about it and so on. But here's a quote about karma, a more scientific quote. Karma is pressure towards conformity. It is pressure directing you, the mind, and you, the soul, towards you, the spirit. And that's what it's all about. And that's Dr. King, actually, who said that. But that's what these extraterrestrials want us to do, to turn to our higher selves. If we listen to our lower selves, we'll exercise our free will. We might feel good about it. It might be actually calamitous, but we think, well, I did that. That was my choice. That's what we love doing. But if we surrender to the divine self within us, and karma is pressurizing us through experience towards that point, then we'll listen to our spirit, through our soul, through our mind, to our lower consciousness, but coming from the high point. And then we're following our higher self, not our lower self.
Listening to you talk about our government's reactions to these UAPs, and they're concerned with creating weapons and firing missiles and defending ourselves. I think that most people on this planet would not want violence with our planetary neighbors. They would want peace. They would want cooperation. What can we do as humans living on this planet to accelerate our evolution to the point where we can have that, and where we can somehow get the governments to stop making these decisions for us?
It's a wonderful question. It's one of the best I've been asked. That's a great question. What can we actually do? And that's Dr. King's language. He was interested in what we can actually do. Above all else, much more than in sort of philosophizing. He was interested in what action can we take. And one of the things I've already mentioned, which is to practice the 12 blessings, because that will raise the vibrations of the world. And you can use mantra with it, for example. We do that a lot. So we combine what you might call New Age Christian prayers with Eastern traditional mantras in Sanskrit, and a great power is sent out. We had over 200 people went to a mountain, a small hill, it's more of a hill actually, in the UK, which we regard as a holy place, Holdstone Down in North Devon, and sent out energy using the 12 blessings and mantra when there were, well, it's still a terrible situation in Gaza, but nevertheless went there to pray, and within hours of that, still terrible, I know, it didn't stop it, but within hours of that pilgrimage that we made, the human corridors were opened by Israel, and aid got in, which hadn't got in for months. They've been trying to do this for months. And actually some aid did get in. I know it's really bad now, but this is back in July, and people's lives were saved. And I think a couple of hostages were released as well. Should be more, but at least a couple were released. So that's just one example of the power of people gathering, making the effort, manipulating karma in a positive way, manipulating, and not to manipulate people, but to manipulate the energy or the cycle. It's not really an energy, it's a law of karma for the benefit of humanity. Now, if we can change the karma of the world, which we can, even a few of us can, then they can come closer. And for example, one of the things Dr. King was told was about the orbits of a craft called Satellite Number 3, and the dates were given. And we have those dates. And so we cooperate with those dates, because then the output of energy is enhanced thousands of times. So every step we take towards them, they can take two towards us, or they will. They don't have to. Out of their compassion, their love for all life, they do. And so if we take action, this podcast we're doing now, we're talking what I believe to be absolute truth about extraterrestrial life. And the people who are good enough to tune in with an open mind to this podcast, they are endorsing, they are empowering they may or may not believe it all, but they are empowering these what I regard as revelations of truth. That sows seeds in the ethers of the world as a whole. So the more people turn to the light through prayer, through mantra, through studying great truth, and through, say, cooperating with satellite number 3, through going to, as I mentioned, a holy mountain like Holston Down, which was charged by an intelligence from another planet, and so on, all these things will change world karma. And then when that changes, then they can come closer to us and we can cooperate more directly with them. You know, I've found over and over again, actually, I was talking about somebody else today who's a dedicated ufologist, actually, and he knows what I mean. But when you really start to get engaged in the truth about this subject, you're more likely, I find, to have sightings, even though you might be quite skeptically minded in the sense that, you know, is this a meteorite? Is it a satellite? Is it a drone? Is it something from the Earth? You question all of that. But I found that over and over again. And when we launched this book I mentioned, Contacts with the Gods from Space, in 1996, and Dr. King was still on Earth in his physical body. He wasn't here because his health wasn't good enough, but he was very, very cognizant of this. We went to 22 cities in the UK, launching this book, giving lectures. We started in a town called Leicester, and we ended in a town called Torquay. Don't expect a lot of your viewers to know those two places, but in Leicester, the first day, 2 hours before our lecture, there was a mass UFO sighting in Leicester, seen by people who'd never heard of our lecture. And on the last day, we got to Torquay, and as I arrived down there, on the front page of the newspaper was a headline saying, UFO seen heading for Torbay, which is part of Torquay. And that too was said by someone who didn't know about our lecture, which means our publicity wasn't as good as it should have been. But nevertheless, it's just an illustration, and I've had this so many times, that they will help us. They will cooperate with us, and in more significant ways than sightings even. They'll help us with the nuclear reduction. I mean, I was with Dr. King just hours before the Chernobyl disaster. I was physically with him, and he received a communication before it happened. I can't recall how many hours before it was, but very few. And he was told a great disaster is about to strike. He wasn't told where on this occasion, but he was told we had to cooperate with extraterrestrial spacecraft with an outpouring of energy, spiritual energy, love energy, if you like, which we did for several days. And the facts of Chernobyl, which was in 1986, weren't revealed. That terrible disaster in that nuclear power station in Chernobyl weren't revealed for several days. And during those several days, we had been cooperating with extraterrestrial craft. And we published that because they quickly said it was a fluke. It could have been far worse. It was terrible, but it could have actually affected the whole world in a terrible manner. And we published that year in a journal the fact that our cooperation with UFOs had reduced the impact of Chernobyl. 16 years later, the Russian journal Pravda, published in 2002, published the fact that a UFO was seen over Chernobyl by a crowd of people. It emitted a pink, I think it was a pink beam onto the power station, as a result of which it was a steam explosion instead of a complete nuclear electronic explosion. And the effect was 4 times less than it would have been had this UFO not been present. And that was, completely unknown to us when we published this journal. All we knew was that our cooperation with extraterrestrials had manipulated karma, and for all I know, that enabled them to reduce the impact of Chernobyl 4-fold.
That is incredible.
I know. It's incredible. It's an incredible case which I personally witnessed. I was physically in the room with Dr. King in Arizona, actually, when he got that communication.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Pleasure. He's the real
mentioned-
thing. I do understand there's a lot of stuff out there, and I do know that people need to be careful. So I repeat, don't take my word for this. Check it out. But I can say, because I know this, he was genuine. He was the real thing. He was a proper master, proved to me beyond any doubt whatsoever, and he was genuinely in contact with extraterrestrials, and he's left a legacy, the like of which I don't think we have on Earth anywhere else.
You mentioned satellite, was it satellite 3?
Satellite number 3.
Yes. Just for people who aren't familiar, could you just give a quick background of what that is?
Love to. Yeah, love to. So the purpose of satellite number 3 is not to be sighted, first of all. There are many craft that are sighted, and they're in increasingly varied shapes, by the way, which was also prophesied by the master Ethereus before it happened. Because those who know about UFOs and things, they'll know that in the early days, they were called flying saucers.
Yeah.
And then you had the flying saucer, and you had the cigar-shaped object, which is now like cylindrical. Now you've got a lot of Tic Tacs. We have pathetic names, by the way, just as an aside. These are glorious, wonderful craft, and we name them after a peppermint or a cigar or a sort, a piece of crockery. But that's by the by. So you had the flying saucer, and that's changed tremendously. But satellite number 3 is an egg-shaped, ovoid craft that comes into orbit at certain times, not to be seen. In fact, it chooses not to be seen, which they can do, which American military have now confirmed they can do. They can be invisible if they choose to be. There's a couple of ways they can do it, and those ways are Dr. King revealed in that book, Contacts with the Gods from Space. So anyway, it radiates energy. It has brilliant technology. And this is a karmic thing. It bases it on the actions of human beings. They don't have to believe in UFOs. They probably don't even, most of them won't even know about satellite number 3. That doesn't matter. But it's based on their love. Let's use the right word. Their love for all life. So they could be helping a blind person cross a road. They could be giving healing. They could be caring for the poor and the destitute. They could be engaged in some real form of higher education in a selfless way, not for profit, but to help others, or primarily to help others. Any form of service, the revelation of truth is a form of service. I think you're doing that on your podcast. These things will all be potentized when satellite number 3 is in orbit thousands of times. In fact, we were told once it was 3,000 times. Now, that potentization is a karmic factor. Again, all this comes back to karma all the time, because people say, why don't they land openly? Why don't they just land in Trafalgar Square or Hollywood Bowl or wherever it might be and prove themselves? And the answer is karma. We don't deserve it. We wouldn't use it right anyway. We've just been looking at footage of a drone firing a Hellfire missile at a spacecraft. They know then that they are greater psychologists by far than we are. They know us better than we know ourselves. And it's all timed very carefully. But at the root of it all, at the root of everything, is karma.
Richard, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Would you like to share with our viewers where they can find more about you and your work, as well as Dr. King's work?
Please do. I was actually privileged to co-author the biography of Dr. King with Brian Kniep, who is secretary of the American headquarters in LA. And that's also an audiobook. So I actually recommend that. You can get that at Amazon, or you can get it through our website on Audible, or however you choose to get these things, because not only will you get the full content, but all the transmissions that are in there and all the speeches by Dr. King that are in there, where we have, and sometimes he would record things on, in those days, a cassette recorder, his recollections of his childhood, whatever it might be, where we have an audio source, we've used it. So they won't just hear me talking and Brian talking. Wherever we have an audio source from the Master Ethereus, Mars Sector 6, the Master Jesus, Saint Peter, and the Saturnians, who are just wonderful, absolutely beautiful voices, you will hear those. And it makes it a really fantastic experience. So that's called The King Who Came to Earth. But to get in touch, please have a look at my website, richardlawrence.co.uk. I do a podcast called The Spiritual Freedom Show. People are very welcome to look into that. They'll find a lot of clips there about a whole variety of topics. And then the Ethereus Society is at Ethereus, AETHERIUS.org. And there you'll see our activities too. We might have activities in your area, but certainly we have a lot of online activity. I would say every day we have at least one, sometimes more than one, online activity, mainly to send out prayer energy, to send mantra energy, to send love energy out to the world.
I have one final question for you. If you could give one message to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Well, I would give the message which is really at the heart of the 9 freedoms, actually, which I won't read from it. I'll do it in my own words then, if I may. Service is the key. Service is the absolute key in this day and age. And if you can give, a lot of people say, well, should I give materialistic service? Because a lot needs to be given. There's wonderful medical work, there's wonderful retrieval work and rescue work and all kinds of work, peace work and so on, needs to be done. But should I do that or should I give spiritual service? And I was asked that once in an interview and I said, well, most people don't really believe in spiritual service, but everybody believes in materialistic service. So whatever else you do, and do as much service as you can, I would certainly include spiritual service, because this, as I mentioned, will change the karma of the world. And don't underestimate, please don't underestimate what you can do. People don't think they can do a lot. We are divine. We have divinity within us. We have unlimited potential. In fact, the name of Dr. King's last book, which was published posthumously, and I co-authored it, is Realize Your Inner Potential. And that isn't just realize your inner potential to have wonderful inner states of bliss and peace and enlightenment, although those you can get, and I can vouch for that. They are there, they are real, they can be experienced. But above all, it's realize your inner potential to give maximum service to the world. And if you do that, you'll change the karma of the world and you'll change your own karma for the better.
Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.